What's up, guys? This is episode 271 of the Option Podcast. That guy looks like Bryan McDermand. Buckle up, people. The episode starts right now. Well, there's a reason why this guy's back. And not because I can't find anybody else and I stink. No, this guy's back because you guys ask and ask and ask. And you know how I do. When you ask, you shall receive. Because for me, I've got to give the people what they want. What
What's
up,
going on,
Brian?
brother? How you doing?
I'm good, my man. And the thing I like about you having you on the podcast, and the reason why people like tuning in is because we come with a purpose, right? Sometimes I have friends who just want to talk about Area 51 and all that fun stuff, and there's some people that are value guests. I want to get to know them, but for my revolving guy, my savage coach, today we have a purpose, and we can pretty much start anywhere, but you're a genius. But before we start, how are you? How's things at the club?
Things are good. We're in a pause right now. So just to give a little backstory for those who don't know me, I run Progression Beach Volleyball in the Chicagoland area. We have an 11 to 18U program. So we do 4 10-week sessions with 3 1-month pauses. Everyone gets coaching from the same pool of coaches. So it's not like one's teams gets a certain quality and regional teams gets a different quality. Not that there's not some really talented regional coaches, but sometimes the level of experience isn't the same as what clubs are putting at the top. We have kids that play multiple sports and are involved with different, some are musicians, some are in the arts, some are doing internships for something that inevitably will be their career. So it's been really good. We've got some girls that are coming in for private lessons and scrimmages to keep going in February, but we also have a lot of kids that are taking a breath and getting an actual off season so we're excited to give them that. So personally, been doing really well.
You look
Turned
good.
41 a couple weeks ago, and 40 was kind of my goal was a little more balance. And I think I created better boundaries in regards to I wasn't working myself into the ground. I had some physical things between a herniated disc and started to feel some things where I could just tell I was overdoing it. So I finally found a little balance. And last 4 weeks, I've been lifting twice a week, playing twice a week. We just got done playing with a couple friends. And weirdly, I feel better. I feel, even though I might not be working as many hours, I feel much more present in those hours. So no, man, I'm probably as good mentally as I've been in any of these interviews. So I'm doing good. How about yourself, man?
I gotta say, when we do the right thing and when we do what's right for our body, we become slowly more immune to old age, right? Like right now you're 41, but I bet in some ways you feel better than when you felt at 31. Of course, there's a physical part, maybe you jumped higher and this and that. But like for me, I was playing with the carnivore thing last year and this and this, and I find this nice balance thing where my body hollers at me when it doesn't want it and it says yum when it does. And it's separated the distinction between neurological addiction as opposed to what your body receiving it and performing. So I actually want to
Yeah.
play again. I want to get out there. I'm going to go out
Come
there
on
and I'm,
out.
I'm going to
Court's
yank
ready for
someone.
you.
Yeah,
Hop in our group. It'd be awesome to have you. Just let us know.
I will, and I will. But I will not allow myself to veer away from the perfect segue you had to juniors and balancing their life, because that's what I'd like to talk about first. You sent me a message, making sure we're recording, and I'm just going to read it. Now, for everybody listening, coaches, trainers, parents, because that's the demographic we attract when we're on this podcast, this is going to sound like a general question, but stick with us because we are going to get neck deep in it. All right. So you messaged me defining excellence in juniors volleyball, right? What are 3 or 5 things? We're going to tackle 3 for time constraints that you consider qualities that universally offer excellence to. All right. So, and it came 3-pronged: players, right?
Mm-hmm.
coaches, parents, then coaches. So allow us to tackle the players first. We go a little back and forth on the players, and then we'll, you and your genius will steer me to whatever, because that's how you
You
do.
don't need to keep using that G word. If anything, it's just this is what I spend my time.
Yeah.
I've just had a lot of experience. I've worked with a lot of people, and just to kind of to go one layer further, um, I want to talk about excellence in a manner that is something that is universal. What I mean by that is a lot of what I see when it comes to articles or videos about achieving things in sports. I don't always think it caters in a way that covers everyone. So what I mean by that is, the story that I've been telling people is when I coached Division One, there was a girl on our team, 6'2", with a 6'3" wingspan, was born to snap a ball on the outside. Just a fantastic physical player. And the truth is the whole year I coached them, you just never saw really a love for it. What you saw was a 21-year-old who probably their whole childhood was validated based on the results, who I believe played the sport because at that age, you want that validation from your peers, your parents, your mentors. This player, their freshman year, was one of 3 players in the entire country for Division One that had a 30 kill, 20 dig game. But at the end of their junior year, they handed their scholarship back, transferred back to a school back home, and what I believe was for the first time in their life actually taking a look in the mirror and saying, what's important to me? So one of the things that I consider excellence for a youth sports program or on the player's end is something that you can give to a player that truly has what it takes to play at the Division One level, that loves, the work that it takes. They like the workouts. It's not feeling as much of a sacrifice to do the right things on the nights and weekends, taking care of your nutrition, taking care of your body. You're spending your time watching game film versus just scrolling. And I got to tell you, I think that is not the norm for the typical 11 to 18-year-old, right? We have kids in our program that know they're not looking to play in college, that excel in things off of the court, and still want a quality volleyball experience, right? So when I think of excellence in juniors volleyball, I want to create things that we can not necessarily say like you have to achieve this to be excellent, but what are questions and answers to those questions that we can give kids to self-evaluate so that they can use those answers to figure out what's best for them. I don't think year-round club and travel tournaments is good for families that don't have a certain financial ability or kids that frankly have passions outside of volleyball. I think kids that physically don't have the ability, I think some people can't handle playing 12 months a year without their bodies breaking down. Certainly not without the working out to complement that. And I believe off seasons, and there's sports science that says that. So, I when we talk about this, I just want people to know I'm not talking about like how do we get players to win the most or get as far as they can. What I want to talk about is when it comes to juniors volleyball as a player, what are things that we can have a kid think about that will help them make decisions on what they want to be doing to chase the goals that they have for volleyball? Is it about playing at the next level? Is it about, playing at a high level, but not without losing the things that also make them who they are as people? With parents, how do you best complement your kids? Are you self-aware of those kids' goals versus putting your own goals in front of them? And how do you best find that balance of holding your kids accountable and making sure they're doing the right things, while also making sure that at all times we're allowing the kids to own their youth sports experience? And kind of the same thing on the coach's side. Like, I think it's a challenge. I think a lot of coaches feel the pressure to have certain results, but can you look at the kids in front of you and understand? I think often about a sevens team that I coached in 2013 that never won a tournament, but I would argue in 23 years of coaching, I got the most out of them. They improved the most. I think where they were mentally as a group that respectfully other coaches told them everything they weren't. And there was a lot of low self-esteem when I came in to watching those kids losing to one's teams at our last end of the season tournament, but literally to the final point, the girls on the sidelines are positively cheering instead of worrying that they're not on the court. Kids on the court are not worried about the scoreboard. They're fighting for every play. So being able to give coaches the ability to not set ceilings for their high achieving kids while also being realistic with their kids that might not be, that college caliber team. So, floor is yours if you want to go from there, but those are kind of the scope of how I define excellence. Is a lot about one size fits one, but also, giving people the opportunity to know how to assess and figure out what's best for them versus, reading all these articles that might give universal answers, but might not truly be compatible for them.
Well, I think there's a value in three ways. There's a value in talking to a kid and then having them realize if they get what they want, do they want what they get, right? We've heard numerous stories where, they're told they want to play college, they're good enough to play college, and when you're good at something, you assume it's what you want because you're good at it. As you just said, girl that put up a 30-kill game in a 22 game, she probably lasted that long because she does it better than most people. But then at some point, and I don't mean to jump to college, I'm trying to keep this to juniors, but I'll dip into college when I say that some kids realize they don't want this to be their 11-month out of their 12-month experience for college, right? My own wife, who went to Harvard, tennis and volleyball, to her credit, because she's smarter than me, right? She realized, I like this, but how much? Do I want this to be my 12-month experience? Do I want to do other things? Do I want to be, part of the debate team? Do I want to do this? Do I want to be part of these social functions of, in that environment, and that campus, as you can imagine, provides all of those things. So, there are coaches, and this is where we need to separate ourselves, because there are coaches like us that want volleyball to be our 13-month experience out of a possible 12 months. And there's the conflicting forces of players knowing what they want and wanting getting what they want and wanting what they get versus the coaches wanting it for them in this certain way, where we have to step back and say, hey, I got a job to do as I guess as a coach in the classic overall sense of the word, because I was gonna subdivide that stuff, and I'm not trying to do that, but I really, really value your take. But because you're better than me, let's go through each of these with me. I have some of mine, and I'd like for us to break it down together, because you did a fruit roll up, man. That was pretty cool. So I wanted to start with the players, players who are listening to this, right? There's the value of just taking care of the little things. Are you, indoor, your sneakers on, ready to go? Are you putting up the net before practice starts? The ability to take initiative. The initiative meaning the ability to do something without being told to, right? There's value in that. There's value in showing up on time. I'm ex-military, and I've kept so many jobs because I was always the first one there and the last one to leave. And if you make that part of your routine, it's not something that you have to try to do. Right. This is required reading for your club, just like LMU is like chop wood, carry water. Right. You embrace the process. You become part of the process. So it's not a fire. You become the fire. You be consumed by it. Right. Before I move off of that. Oh, sorry. You and I agree. You can't making an effort. Failing at trying as opposed to not trying at all is a physical challenge for the player, and the mental, it is our responsibility to help it. Because remember the last episode, I'm like, I just want this chick to go. And you're like, Jay, but what if she can't? What if there's something in her brain that says she can't, right? So that's where I'm still on the players, but that's where us as coaches have to monitor that. Again, if you get what you want, do you want what you get? One must participate in one's own salvation is the conclusion of everything I just said. There's so many things that you can control that the other people can't. You can control your nutrition. You can control if the weight room's your thing. You can control your own reps. You can control coming on time, even though sometimes parents got to drive you there, and you're like, Mom, really?
I mean, I'll put my hand up at times, and I'm notorious. I spin too many plates at the moment. We're making some moves where that's going to change, but I tell them some people I think would cringe if they saw some of the things. We have kids that show up 10 to 20 minutes late. Now, it's a little different for us. We train in-house. We're not a team that's preparing for a tournament. You know what I mean? I have one group that's a college track group that's invite only. That is a little more I'm going to hold them to a higher standard in regards to if they have goals to play at the next level, I have to hold them to the standard for the goals that they've set, right? We also have kids that are traveling for over an hour to get to our facility one way. We have kids who are coming from over the Indiana border, coming from the city at a time where rush hour is happening. We train in the winter where there's ice. So my thing, being accountable with that is like, I want my kids, I'd rather them be there 10, 20 minutes late versus driving erratically, but giving me advance notice so that we can plan the practice plan accordingly and get there safely. But I do think, like, in regards to, like, you have a tournament that you're going to as a team, like having to get there on time, getting a quality warm up, like putting yourself in a position you may not always control the results, but not looking back and saying, like, the other kids were warming up on the court when we showed up, things like that. Like, I absolutely think there needs to be structure and you need to be, showing up for the work that you need to do. And not just that, but what are you doing with the time you have? We don't practice. I love that Indiana football has been preaching less practice, but quality practice, not wasting time, right? Not to I've started to golf a little bit, and coincidentally, there's a simulator and there's a club that trains, like, literally simulator one side. I turn, there's a glass, and there's everyone training. And I'm not there to judge, but I cannot deny that I watch, and sometimes I see these lines of 10 to 20 kids, and there's a lack of touching the ball, even though they're playing a lot. There's minutes where a kid is literally not mentally engaged, not physically engaged. So we really try to get the most out of our time. I don't want to dominate our kids' time. I think we don't. I don't know if we've ever, addressed that. Our kids are playing without an off season, and at the same time, if we're not going to give an off season, I think a lot of kids deal with injuries and they don't do what a pro would do or even a college athlete would do to nurse them back to health, because the pressure of, well, if I don't go to practice, I'm not going to get to play in the travel tournament, or I'm a starting player and my coach wants to win these games and the backup isn't as good as me. So they're going to have me play through this versus, like, nip it in the bud. So I'm not dealing with chronic injuries or, certainly when I have that big competition. So, I agree that, like, if you've got commitments, you need to be honored with them. But I also think that, for me, I kind of on the other side of it too, is like, I want a balance. Like, I think part of excellence, we don't have a lot of burnout in our program. And that's true. And when I coach club, I had hardworking, passionate kids that just inevitably are going to burn out because they haven't for 2 or 3 years gotten more than a couple weeks to breathe, I think that's a tall ask for pro athletes. Would never, like the union would never allow to agree with the owners that they wouldn't be able to have an off season and things like that. So that is something that, like, I don't say any of that to combat the thing about being on time or like being disciplined with all that. But I do think that part of what I want to look at when I think of excellence as juniors volleyball is when my kids are there, that they're able to train their hardest and be mentally as dialed in as they can, because we're not grinding them into the ground, where practice becomes a burden or obligation because we're running them in a schedule that respectfully the top players in the country don't play.
I think it's interesting that the whole player perspective breaches into the whole coaching commentary as well, right? Because we're talking about coaching and players at the same time, and we were definitely going to get to that on decisions that you have to make as a coach. Is, do you have to do this because this person literally gets out of school at 4 and the practice starts at 4? You got to give her 10 minutes, right? I was just saying from a player's perspective, when you're part of a team or a group, and you see other kids that have other obligations, right, and every excuse in the world where they can be late too, and yet they're there. If you have to be late and you have to do what you got to do, you have to do what you got to do. But when you see other people respecting your time and making an effort to show up on time, that's something you need to take interpretive notice of. And I didn't want to talk about the coaching perspective of that yet, because I think there's a way that you guys like you and me can set it up, a mental thing for the women and the men, which are sometimes the same, but we both know are very, very different as far as and reserve. No, but in terms of camaraderie and leadership, right? if a guy's on time, that's a leadership thing. You could teach that. If there's a sisterhood thing where like we all function together, you have to be able to teach that. And this is why like everybody can't coach, right? I'm some guy who can play can coach, but he really can't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He knows the X's and O's, but he has some of these guys have no idea. I mean, I don't mean to go that route, but I wanted to wrap up by saying, before we get to the fun part, me and Bryan, which because we're coaches, where he's a program director, and I'm a parent of a basketball kid. My kid's gonna play volleyball later, but we wanted to have a little fun, and I wanted to land on my end by saying there's a lot that you can do to participate in your own success or failure, because with success comes failure, right? Before you rise, you must fall. That's a quote the great Fyodor Emelianenko, MMA fighter, when he lost his first match. Let's jump into we got parents first. Want to do parents, or you want to do coaches?
You can talk about parents a little bit. So absolutely. So, it's funny. Last night I'm at the simulator, and there's a couple bays and it's small, so you can, not try to eavesdrop, but you can just kind of hear what's going around you. So there are two guys, about my age and little girl. And the two guys finished their session, and then they've got this little girl that was been sitting patiently watching them, and they had a little putting green. So now the dads are having a drink and having some food, and the kid's on the putting green. And again, this kid couldn't be more than 7 or 8, and the dad's trying to like drill her already, like all right, see if you can make these 3 putts from these 3 spots, and she's literally like, I don't want to do that. And he's like, don't you want to be a PGA player? And like, it's so funny because she's being so
what
like
does that stand
a 7
for?
or 8-year-old. Well, it's funny because he's like, where would you like to like where would you want to live when you grow up? Like he's trying to like find a way to twist to her like you want to be a PGA pro, right? And it was just so funny to watch this sparring match with this little child that like will not give you a literal answer to your question, and this dad that like, so many well-meaning parents, I think, is like, if I just start my kid young and they have a passion for it, like they're going to have this amazing opportunity. And I think it comes from I think a lot of parents with good intent, like want to give their kid a better experience than they had. I think a lot of us, whether we were willing to work for, a lot of people had aspirations to play a sport at a high level. And I had to go a different conversation with kids. I had group meetings of like 3 to 4 players at a practice, and I'm just kind of opening the floor to them on like, what are the things, you're 17, 18 years old, most of them were seniors. What are you all doing okay? Let's talk volleyball if you got things of volleyball, but like, how are we all doing? And every group had at least one person that's biggest stress was like, my parents are pushing me to do this, but this is really what's in my heart. And I think it's really hard. I don't have kids, so I'm not speaking from like,
Yes,
these are
yes, you do.
absolutes.
Oh, yes, you do.
I rent kids, and I fun uncle maybe. I'm mentoring and I'm there for them. But my point, there's a difference when like you're responsible for them 24/7. What my kids do off the court doesn't reflect on me the way that parents, I think, feels reflects on them. And while I give them everything I can when they're on the court, my parents have been there for me at any point that they can. So, like I said, I understand that there is a pressure, and there are things that a parent could look at me and say, you can't understand it, and I'm not going to push back on that. But I think one of the toughest things for parents is, I think our generation comes from a generation where everything was so linear. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have, frankly, there was a little more old-fashioned. This is your career track, and this is how you live your life. I think parents, well-meaning from my experience, sometimes push kids away from their dreams because I think kids feel like they don't believe in me, and what it really is I think parents are worried that the world won't reward a kid to their potential if they go off the beaten, or off the normal path. So I think it can be hard for parents, especially now, and I'll absolutely say for club volleyball, when I have parents that come to my program whose kids have not been served well by hardcore club, and they're raw kids, so they're not always getting to the higher level teams. So they're paying a premium, but they're not getting a premium education. And At the same time, those parents are reading articles that talk about how important the exposure is in travel tournaments, right? And we're just focused on those kids getting better. And sometimes with good intent, a lot of parents are looking around them at what everyone else is doing. And they're like, well, this program isn't prioritizing that, right? So am I failing my kid because, all these articles say if we're not doing A, B, and C, that we're not going to have as good of a chance to get in college. Um, so I think it's hard for parents sometimes to, with all this information that kind of pushes them, like you need to be doing this for your kid. And I think a lot of times those articles are written with financial intentions versus what's actually best for the kid. I think it could be hard for parents to really give space for a kid to think about what they want to do with the sport and be objective with where that kid is level wise. Like, are they at a level where club's going to serve them, and do they have opportunities to be with similar level kids and a coach that's going to continue to develop them individually versus just worrying about winning games? And can you be brave enough as a parent to recognize when you might need a healthy alternative to the norm, even if people around you may not support that? So I think part of excellence for kids or for parents is how in tune are you with your child's wants and needs and goals? How in tune are you realistically with the environment you're in and what opportunities you have? And are you able to find that balance of providing them? I don't take for granted what parents do to fund a year-round schedule and travel tournaments and all the fees and the logistics if you got multiple kids that play multiple sports. I think it's a really tough time to be a youth sports parent. And so despite all that, are you able to still stay in tune with your kid and be brave enough to allow them to pursue the things that are important to them, even if it's not what you consider the norm?
Yeah. And you mentioned something very, very important about a generational shift of what's old school and the internet and this and that. But I'm going to say something very old school because this is the hard part first. And I'm going to do the easy part later. For my camera. Where's my camera? You're not their friend. Stop trying to be their friend. You're parent first, friend distant second. Okay? And this is a very cold thing to say. Oh, it's not true. We could be friends too. No, shut up. Shut up. You are a parent first, and as a distant second, still second.
Mm-hmm.
So as friend second. Now, if your kid doesn't want to putt that golf thing, right? As a parent, you have to be prepared and diagnose about them feeling a certain way. Because if they feel a certain way, you appreciate how they feel. And then as a parent, you can work from there. But there are just some things where it's just orders. And you need to go back to the old school. Why? Why is not in your vocabulary in this instance? Now, Bryan and I have had the debate about why and understanding the why. And Bryan will be surprised that I don't disagree with him on those things. I just disagree with there's certain things where you don't ask why. You freaking do it. Eat your vegetables, why? Just, girl, put that in your mouth and chew. Stop. You're not allergic to it, right? So from this generation, the best way to take care of that is to say, hey, you're not going to spend this time playing Roblox.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to spend this time staring at a screen. If volleyball's not your thing, fine. Pick high alive, pick tennis, pick bocce ball, but you're going to do something. You're going to do something, an activity that requires you showing up and respecting other people's time, and in a cooperative effort, work with people to accomplish a goal. I don't care what it is, but if you're a parent, that's what you got to do. Now, that guy making someone want to do golf, that's different. And I don't support that. In fact, my kid, I'm a lifelong volleyball player, coach, whatever. My kid don't even play volleyball. She plays she's on a basketball team, and she takes private lessons for tennis because she's a savage. And you know what's going to happen, right? She's going to want to play volleyball later. So I got a little hour every Thursday just so she can see it and she knows how it's done. So when she changes her mind, we ain't got to start over. But that's the hard part. All right. Now let me land with the easy part. Your kid is playing volleyball. She wants it. She loves it. She can't get enough of it. She has a coach that planted the volley virus. No known cure, no vaccine, no medication drug. Hey, you got some work to do. So make sure that kid comes on time. If coming on time is important to her, and if it isn't important to you, stop being her friend. Be a parent. Get her
Can
there
we
on time. Do you know what
let
I'm saying? Like
what
if
if
a
what
parent's
if
like, you're gonna be a little late, it's not a big deal. If the kid wants to be on time, help him out, man. Help him
can
out.
you be both? And this is what I ask about. And then
Yes,
so this is what I'm gonna ask you about this.
there's an order.
So like think about your inner circle of friends, right? Like I think about the people closest to me, and my real friends can look at me and be like, "You're f***ing up, man." Like or like you need to be accountable for this, and you might not realize you're doing this, and I care about you, so you need to be aware of it. So like and again, I'm not gonna. My situation is a little unique. I got five parents, and without going into too much detail, like you know, I think it's beautiful that at 41 I have a relationship with my parents that I do think is a little more friends. Now, as a kid, I'm sure there's moments that they have to hold me accountable, right? I'm not disagreeing that you can't be your friend instead of your parent. I think talking to people from that generation, I think there's a lot of unresolved things sometimes with their parents because that whole generation was like, we don't talk about things, there's back channel conversations, but we just don't, we leave elephants in the room, I feel.
Yeah,
So I think it's, I'm not against the fact that I tell my parents sometimes that can cause challenges with like we're talking about things that they couldn't talk about with their kids, and then it gets to a point where like, okay, but now that there's this parent kid dynamic, it becomes uncomfortable, right? But I think that discomfort is a privilege because I love the fact that I get to know my parents as human in a way that I don't think they didn't always get to see theirs. And even some of there's absolutely been trauma. I think every parent with no malicious intent is sometimes going to do things that doesn't hit their kid right. And I'm grateful that I can look at my parents and instead of being like judgmental or um, feel angry about it, I can understand like fuck, they were just trying their best and there are issues with that. So I do think that I think it's important. I think kids are so whether they as teenagers will ever say it to their parents' face, deep down they want their parents' validation so badly. And I think there is a space in 2026 for parents to have, you know, yeah, you're going to have to be firm in certain situations. And I think as a coach we have that sometimes too where like I have a kid that's not going to like the thing I'm going to tell them, but I can always remind them that like I know you don't like it, but I'm saying this to you because of the goal you created. And so even though it's me saying you need to be doing this, I'm saying it based on what you want to do. And if that changes at any point, we can change that. But as long as you're coming to me and this is your goal, then I need to hold you to that standard. If you're coming to my program and that's what you're trusting me to do. I think for parents, it's very similar with that. Um, I think it's important. I talk with a lot of my kids. A lot of my kids feel very safe to talk to me about things that sadly I think they wish they could talk to their parents about. And I always try to be I've always been respectful to make sure that I keep certain boundaries and make sure I don't overstep that. But I think so often that so many parents have good intents that they just really could get inside and understand what their kids were feeling about that maybe just a little more back and forth alongside of at the end doing your job as a parent could be beneficial and maybe make sometimes that connection a little bit better. So um, I know it's not so much an answer, it's just kind of it's just something I kind of feel of. I'm working on a book kind of talking about everything that we're going over today, and it is a one size fits one thing. So I think it's important though for regardless of what you do with your kids that you give them ownership of their own goals, but yeah, you hold them accountable, especially if you're paying a lot of money and time. I like what you said at the end there about like yeah, getting them there. If you've put them in a program and they need to be there at a certain point, make sure that you're putting them in a position to be successful, and then hopefully they're doing their part too.
and that was my last point. If you're lucky enough to have a kid that's taking something seriously, don't You know what I'm saying? Don't put them in a position where they can't commit. If they're overcommitting, that's fine. And that then you have to address that as a parent, right? Because parents basically is the conflicting forces of knowing what's best for the kid versus the parent always being right. Right. So those
As
are
a
those two sound like the same thing sometimes, right? He always thinks he's right. Of course I'm right. You're freaking 13. Stop, stop. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are just
yeah.
regular basic things like you ain't gonna smoke. You're not gonna, you know what I'm saying? You're not gonna serve, and
Mhm.
I'm not gonna sign you up for the military, right? They're just certain. I don't mean to be extreme about it, but I'm just trying to
No,
say
you're
that
good.
there's certain things where you as a parent need to leave room to allow the kid to feel a certain way because it's easier to diagnose, right? But you're also shaping their personality and you're shaping their character armor, right? So what if there's a situation that becomes too stressful? They revert back to this thing, and you as a parent are not doing your job because you can't properly diagnose that. If you don't catch that early, you're going to be paying for counseling later. You know what I'm saying? So everyone's saying, "Oh, go read a book." Yeah, actually, go read a book. The book's crap about parenting, and don't listen to it. But you know what I'm saying? Be open to new ideas because the existence, and I'll say this again, that the conflicting forces of what a parent thinks is best for the kid versus the parent always being right is just part of the reality of parent child from past to present, from old school to new screens to the internet to all of that stuff.
And I think one of the challenges, that I think parents probably have is like, I think every kid's different. So I think there are some kids that I've coached. I think about Jess Horowitz, who's now at Florida State, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a kid that like she had senior prom, and Sunday morning the parents were like, she wants to do a practice Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And I'm like, she only gets one senior prom. I'm she's in a place where like I don't mind if you want to start Tuesday. And it wasn't like angry. It was just very matter of fact, are you available Sunday morning? Yeah, we'll see you at 9, right? That was a kid who had that motor. And Jess is one of the most unique individuals I've ever met in all the good ways, and that's how she's driven. Like that's a kid that has that. And I'm also working with a lot of kids that are 16, 17, 18 that are brilliant, that are well-rounded, and they're good at a lot of different things, but they don't have like our volleyball. You know what I mean? They don't have that thing at an age where I think it's really okay to not have that thing. And I think one of the toughest things, I think it's tough for kids today to be honest with themselves, especially with the pressure of social media and the amount of validation that comes from achievement at a young age, and it does. We don't talk about like high school is such a class system. Like people up. My high school experience like wrecked me for 4 years. And it's true. I thank God I had a good middle school experience and just enough support at home and in my inner circle to not act on how miserable that place made me. Um, and on the flip side of that, um, I think there's a lot of kids that in youth sports, like they're smart enough to see that if a kid comes to a tryout, like you're going to a program that you're paying to get developed, but if this program thinks that this other kid in your position is better, they're going to get a better experience than you get, a better opportunity for growth than you get. And then we expect kids to be comfortable, to just be true to themselves and give themselves the space if they don't know what they want at 15, 16, 17, 18. Maybe you aren't the type of person. I didn't start playing volleyball serious. Like I played in high school and I did 2 years of a small club, but I would say 19 is when I really started to like think of the game at a higher level. And I started, I started at Rec Sixes and I worked my way up. Um, Everyone's got their own clock, and for parents it's a challenge, but like, and that's what I hope eventually with my book to do is to give them the questions to ask themselves and to look at their kid and like objectively be like, is this kid eat, breathe, and sleeping one thing? Like, do they have the motor to be specialized at a young age in a manner that they're gonna not look back with spite? Are they the type of kid that anything they pick up, they have a passion for, they can improve at, but they don't, they do something for 3 months and then they want to do something else and they want to do something else. I think there's value to let a kid try a bunch of stuff, even if they don't necessarily excel at a young age as much as some of their peers. but giving them the peace of mind at 18 to maybe know themselves in a way that those kids that spend their whole childhood doing what they think they need to be doing, and then in college they got to look at themselves for the first time honestly and say,
Yeah.
what really does make me happy? And so I
And how
think,
many of those kids, right, Brian?
I mean,
So
59%
many of
probably,
them.
because only
Yeah.
41% that enroll in a 4-year school finish within 4 years. So the majority of kids that are going to college objectively are not getting the experience they think. And my theory on that is that it's not that 60% of kids aren't capable, but I think a lot of what they do in high school is more about aptitude and like what's your proficiency? What are your natural gifts? I was told my whole childhood how I was going to do something in math because I've always tested in the 99th percentile for math. It's just something I've been able to do. But no one asked me if I had a passion for it. And the moment that it became work, like at 19, my first like really challenging class in college, and I realized like, holy, I don't want to do this. And what do I want to do? That's the truth of it. So that's why I really, beyond being a volleyball coach, like I really try to, I talk with our kids before or after practice, kind of more Mr. Rogers, like you are first day of practice, especially with new kids, you are enough exactly as you are today. You are valid today. And what you do on this volleyball court does not change that. And if anything, for my kids that are on the lower half of a group, like I don't want them to be discouraged when they lose. I want them to be curious, the Ted Lasso thing. What is it that those other kids are doing that you haven't seen maybe, and how do we work through, working on practicing things so that next time you go against it, you can counter it. What's breaking down on your side and how do you fix that, right? So yeah, like giving kids space to learn at the level that they're at, and finding that sweet spot of like, yeah, if you're here for 2 hours, like your time is valuable, your childhood's going to go faster than you think. So my job is to get the most out of your time here. And at the same time, while that's my goal for you, if you have an off day physically, I don't want you to think that that means that I look at you as a lesser human being. And I think a lot of kids are in environments that don't always offer for that. And especially kids that have things off the court that are rough, and they have a rough day at school or something at home, and then they go to practice, that might be the one place to get an escape from that. And then you're not you are absolutely deregulated from off the court, so you're not having a good day. And then a coach just punishes you and yells at you and what's wrong with you. And they ask it, but they're not asking with like a genuine tone. And then what happens to that kid when they go home? It's
Yeah.
it's
You know,
something that,
yeah.
it
You know what
needs
would have
we
been
we need to be thinking about that a lot.
you know what would have been cool? I don't know if you know who Sarah Stratton is. She played at Pepperdine and then she went to the Olympics, represented Australia in 2000 Olympics.
Sick.
And she had a
Indoor?
son. Yeah, well, beach. So she played
Oh,
indoor at
nice.
Pepperdine, but Australia, had a bid, so they were allowed three teams, like the Americans were allowed three teams in '96. Yeah,
That
Dodwick
wasn't the
Marsh.
year that Natalie. What was the year that Cook won it?
That was the other Aussie team. Yeah, she
Okay,
was she was the third
cool,
Aussie team because Australia was allowed three
awesome. All
teams
right, giving me
as
some
as
some
as
history
the
I didn't know
host.
about. Very cool.
Well, she was also the mother of a kid named Zach, who I coached at Evolution. He's like kind of like a skateboard punk that, like at 16, decided he wanted to play volleyball, right? And the way his brain worked, I just made him a setter, right? Because I knew that because his mom played, I could just throw him in there and keep as busy as possible. But that wasn't why I brought her up. I brought her up is because she would have been great for this podcast because she could have offered a perspective as a volleyball parent, as an elite athlete and a volleyball parent. She would have been great to this. So next time around, I'm just, how I just
Sure,
drive us off the cliff a little bit. But
we can do a
yeah,
panel.
I'd love to have her because we had this thing three-prong, right? But we are experts, but sometimes we have a conversation that breaches the expertise of a volleyball parent, and sometimes it'd be good to have them in, Don't get me wrong, I know everything, but I was just thinking next time around, let's get Sarah in,
Yeah, absolutely. I had a really good conversation with one of my parents last night. And his daughter came to us, and she's committed to go play in college next year. She's a hard worker, and it was really a full circle conversation because perfect example, really passionate parent, reading all the articles that are telling them all these things are super important, comes to our program, we're prioritizing different things. I told him at the end of it, I'm like, look, man, I'm at the end of it. I know we had some tough conversations.
Mhm.
I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything we've done is perfect. But I said, I'm grateful that with everyone around you telling you all these other things that are important, that you had faith to come to a program that wasn't necessarily prioritizing those things, but like ultimately prioritize your kid's development. And here she is going to like literally like one of her dream schools, right? And at the end of that conversation, what we also talked about was he and I are going to have a meeting in the next couple of weeks because I'm in a position now where I'm going to start adding some different things to my program, and I want him to give me some honest feedback. They've been with us for 3 years now, and like, what are some things that we could, do differently that you think could have made your experience better? So, maybe next time you have me on, I'll also kind of have some list of things. I told him, I was like, at worst, there might be some things that I say we're not going to change, and this is why. But I try to give my parents the opportunity to have a back and forth with me, and I want to make sure that there are things that I might not be aware of that if they bring to light helps me be a better coach to their kid, you know? So I do think there's value in you know, I really do. I don't always agree with my parents. I think a lot of times the reason I don't agree with them is because they're acting based off of information they got from someone else. It's not necessarily that I think they have any
That was the
different
conflicting
intent than me.
force I was talking about.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
parents knowing
we
versus parents thinking they're right all the time, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
it's tough because like I said,
Mhm.
I think a lot of where parents get that way is from articles I read from people like us. Like I'm just saying, NCSA, JVA, AVCA. Where are the articles on development? Where's the objective things to the 94% that are not college caliber players yet? Like, where's the information that we talk about all these travel tournaments and recruiting showcases, and we don't talk about the fact that if you're in the bottom 90%, you don't need that yet. You need to get better. You need to catch the kids. So when you do the travel, the coaches doesn't look at you and say they're not good enough yet.
Right.
And 94% of you that are, if anyone's watching this and you're a parent or player, if you're not in that top 6%, getting better is all that matters. And you don't
Right.
need to try. People that are on limited budget, I have parents, like we have parents that and parent forums that are fundraising, working second jobs, and the things you're putting that money towards aren't actually catching your kids up. And so,
Yeah.
so I think a lot of I really don't have that many parents that I can't get through to with my messaging. And the ones that I find it, and I've softened my tone on even the ones that I butt heads with, because I realize, my God, you know why these parents are so difficult? Because they're some of the more diligent parents on researching to try to do the right things for their kids, and they're being led by people that are more interested in the check they're going to cut them instead of what actually happens to their kid. And that's a conversation that at some point, like, where is the body that's really talking to the 94%? Because I
Yeah.
don't see it in our sport. I'm not trying to be destructively critical,
You're
but
spoiling our myths. That are one of our subject matters were myths. You just
you
bridged
know,
the myths.
well, and we can, we'll go right to that at that point. But that's like to parents, like so going back to the original thing. Thank you. Look at you getting us back on the rails, my brother. I love that.
Me.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It only took 11 episodes for us to
We were
reverse
talking
roles.
about you can't help it because you're a coach. We talked about players. You
Well,
talked as a
it's
coach. You talked about
it's
parents. You talked as a coach. So
I it's my biggest thing.
yeah.
I'm so I want to hold my parents accountable, but I'm very defensive when we talk about parents being the problem in youth sports. When what's really changed in the last 30 years is the people running our sport, the people that have changed it.
Amen.
Yeah. It's not that just the top players go to nationals anymore. It's everyone, but we're not talking to parents in a manner that, like, hey, this can help you if you want to get exposure, but if you're on a budget, save that money to visit. If you're not beating the top kids in your region, save that money and get a coach that could genuinely look at your film or look at you and say, these are the things that you need to work on, and let's work on it in house. you know and save that money. If you got only a limited amount that you can travel, take care of your game, send film out to coaches at schools that you're interested in, and then go visit the school and then do a camp at the school and get to know the coach, not just so they can evaluate you, so you can get to that school and say, okay, it looks great on paper, but when I step on campus, can I feel, sometimes our kids come back from a camp and they're like, I just didn't get that feeling when I was on campus. You know what I mean? And some kids don't get that test until way too late, So, I don't get me wrong. Parents have to be better at not trusting everything they read, but
Okay.
let's not act like there's not. Fear is a strong motivator of not doing what's best for your kid. And I talk to parents that are really smart, that are really caring and really objective, and they feel that these articles make them like they're going to fail their kid if they're not doing all that other stuff. So,
And I think those things kind of breach the expertise of just being a parent. All right, when you're talking about what's best for your kid. You're a parent should not be a college recruiter. A parent should not be a coach. A parent should be a parent. Okay, and as a parent, maybe train yourself on absolutes. Right, like I don't know if you remember, like our nutrition index a few years ago, like on the top of the breakfast chart was frosted mini wheats, which is basically sugar on top of whole grain, right? These are the experts. And like you said, someone says that and stuffs their kids with freaking frosted mini wheats. And I think parents should pay more attention to things that work or do not. Right, that you're reading something, and there's some things in theory that should work, but at the end of the day, your kid might be an experiment, but they shouldn't be. But it either works or it doesn't. And I'm glad I said that from a mental perspective. If you're lucky enough to have a kid that has something that they like, and they're part of something bigger than them, like volleyball, indoor and beach, right? Team sport. Man, let them cook. Let them cook. And know when to get involved, meaning getting there on time,
I want to talk.
making sure they got the nutrition, and knowing when to not.
Okay, but let's go one step further, because there is. Look, we don't want our kids to stay in a toxic relationship. We don't want our kids to stay in a toxic work environment, right? So
No,
if
they
you're
got
at a
to want to come.
So understand, because I feel there are parents that they hit this crossroads. Like they go to a tournament and they watch. And you got a coach that's like giving nothing positive. Like this is the simplest test I can give you. Is your coach helping your kids see what they can be versus make them feel what they're not? You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like if you see that you've got your kid in a program where their treatment from their coach is solely on whether they're playing well or not, and that exists, right? Like that's a
But
red
of
flag.
course it
Like,
exists. You have to cross that path. It's a competition
what?
sport.
Yeah, but
Either
okay.
they're good enough or they're not. But it shouldn't be the common denominator, Brian.
So we go to last April we go to Hayden Beach. First time we've ever done a club versus club thing. My threes team is a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old playing 18U.
Let's go.
That were subs from another club. Okay, I got two pairs from my own group. They're all underclassmen. We've not been outside for 7 months. We're going to drive 7 hours Friday. Our first serve receive is first serve of a match, right?
Let's go.
So we went 3-19. We on paper did not have a successful wins and losses thing. Now, I watch coaches that scream at their kids, even, sit on the bench and abandon their kids. We preach about being mentally tough, and then I watch coaches not reflect any of the grit and resilience as a coach. I can't just be calm and positive with my players when they're doing the right things, especially when my kids aren't doing the right things, is an opportunity for me to do my job. Like I get really frustrated. I don't think if you're a youth sports coach, you're dealing with 11 and 18-year-olds in a sport that objectively you peak in your 30s, in a sport that your gold medalists lose 45 to 48% of the plays. Okay. So, I had a coach on each court for each pair, and all we're focusing on is problem solving, At no point were we like cracking the whip on our kids in a destructive manner. And there were absolutely moments that I had to look at kids that were struggling mentally with rising to the occasion. I will tell you, there was one of the girls that after the tournament. We had a phone call for over an hour, and there was a moment where she was going to point the finger at someone that it was clearly they were not being accountable. And I very calmly said, look, your focus, if you think that that was the issue, that player was absolutely accountable when I asked questions about what do you want to problem solve? What do you think is breaking down? And here are all the things that you didn't do. And I think every player that, the truth was that was one of the most, that was the highest level competition that kid had ever played. It was, again, we were at a disadvantage that we didn't get outside and get used to the wind and things like that. But I think every great player early in their career has that moment where it's like you either say, okay, it was this person's fault, they were letting this go, and they don't let that go when we're here, blah, 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 blah. Or these are the things that just got exploited on me, and it's time to go to work.
Right.
And that kid from that moment on has been just rock solid. I don't need to chew that kid out. And especially if I see that kid is overwhelmed in the moment, that's my opportunity to not be like, I'm not coddling in the aspect of I'm not going to talk about the things that broke down and put them in a position at practice to work on it. But the game itself is the adversity, and I don't need to pile on that. And I see a lot of coaches that haven't been taught when their kids are making mistakes, they don't know the fix. But what they've been taught is I can make the kid do a down and back. I can pull the kid off the court. I can put someone else in and just blow the lineup up. It takes no talent as a coach to do that. It takes no experience as a coach to do that. And parents that can see that you're paying a premium for a product when even when your team's not doing well, your coach isn't coaching. Like you have to know when to look at your kid and say, I know you want to be part of club, but this isn't what we signed up for. This is not getting you closer to your goals. If the kid on the top team's getting good coaching and getting up, and all this coach is doing is destroying your self-esteem, I would argue sometimes a bad environment can make a kid fall further behind. So I do think for parents, sometimes I think kids see social media, they want to be part of the club experience. I don't think kids are always in a position to understand when they're in a bad learning environment. So I think there is a time for a parent to recognize I need to pull my kid because this program is not prioritizing the things that I'm paying them to prioritize. And I think that's a huge that will absolutely, I'll put that at the lap of whoever's in charge of the fact that to be a club coach, all you got to do is the impact certification. Like the fact that we have a lot of coaches that are going into club coaching kids that signed a contract months before that coach was hired, and all that coach gets is don't touch the kids, don't be alone with the kids, don't give the kids a ride home. Like so much of what impact is, at least in my region, was liability training. What it doesn't teach is, hey, when your kid's doing this with their fingers when you're talking to them, they're deregulated, they're anxious, you need to slow down. Because even if you're telling them the right thing they need to work on, if you're not paying attention to the fact you've got a child that's overwhelmed, this is your opportunity to teach them how to work through that adversity, not add to it. And a lot of kids come to us broken from most of my most uncoachable kids, at some point I can go back in their history and find the coach that made them afraid to make mistakes. And that's the coach's voice that's in their head the minute they make a mistake, instead of, what did I feel there and how do I get a better rep next time? And I'm sorry because I know that was that got me going on a long tangent on that. But that there's a time and a place that I think a parent, and don't get me wrong, kids should talk to the coach, a parent should talk to the coach. There should be conversations before just pulling a coach. But parents need to hold programs to a higher standard, because I feel some of the biggest issues we have is because a lot of club directors are acting off their balance sheet. And so even if 40% of their kids turn over every year, they're not going to raise the bar for those coaches that are coaching those 40%, as long as they can replace those kids with other disgruntled families and the money keeps flowing. So the only solution to raising the bar for programs to set a better standard at the basement is for the people in the basement to not keep signing up. And I think a lot of that comes from when they think the issue was the club instead of the reality that I think every region, you're not at a certain level. There's not enough technically trained coaches to help you. And you have to recognize that sometimes maybe you need a healthy alternative, because right now our business is based on quantity of participants, not quality of education, and the power lies with the people cutting the checks. So thanks for my TED talk. Thanks for coming.
I think the only thing you've showed is you really can't talk about parents and coaches at a heightened level separately. They're conjoined because
We're
that
all
seems to
working
be
together.
that seems to be the conflicting forces, and that's very very interesting, right? And I could definitely spend some time about impact training and safe sport and all that stuff, which I'm not gonna do because all that time all the percentage of time they're worried about pursuing 69 gods, right, is a fail too, right? They still fail at that, right? I mean, it's wild that like there's a percentage. Jason Hollis told me this, like someone's bullied, it's this percentage. Someone's a coach is whatever hostile, it's this percentage. But when you hear boom, everything stops. Everyone pins their ears back, and they even fail, and they still fail at that. So I don't want to talk about them right now, but since we address parents that are breached into the subject of coaching. The common denominator to me is what happens when you lose. All right. You can have programs that are winning programs all the time. You can have programs that have undefeated seasons, but at some point they're going to lose because it is a historical fact that the majority of kids, the first time that they experience a loss, will be playing a sport. All right. So I guess I'm going to bounce the question back to you, and I'm going to regurgitate Chael Sonnen's quote, right? For those of you that heard it, you can skip it, but I'm going to say it again for the people watching this for the first time. They tell you losing's not an option. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. Losing is an option. Losing is the most readily available option all the time. Always there when you need it. Hot 97 rhyme ready. So if your kid has this hang up, perhaps maybe instilled by the parent, but also instilled by the coach, where the game is tight and they're scared of losing or they're scared of the worst result. You as a coach, because now we're breaching into coaching, remind them of two things. One, the other team's feeling it too. All right. And two, it's natural. It's the more we as coaches can remind these kids that the fear of losing is not an unnatural feeling, you can dissipate some of the hang up. Though for some kids it may never go away because you're not with them as much as they are with themselves or with outside forces outside of the coaching facility, right? So that was where I wanted to start that, because as a coach, I'm more a Bill Parcells guy, right? And I would never coach in your club. We just have different styles. But I'm also not a complete idiot. If someone loses, I might say, hey, look, I'm not going to tell you don't feel how you're supposed to feel. However you feel right now is exactly how you're supposed to feel. You felt you should have won, feel that, go through that. If you felt like you did the best you can but you were in over your head, that's a real thing too. I as a coach will never tell you how you're supposed to feel. Feel that way, but remind yourself that it's very, very temporary.
Sure.
This should not be a residual feeling. It should be a very, very temporary feeling. And I think that's where parents would be more hands off, like, whoa, I got a coach doing a lot of things that I as a parent are struggling doing. Well, and my kid don't listen to me, but he's going to listen to the coach, right? And wow, we're kind of doing the same thing here. And that's where I wanted to start from the coaching perspective, even though we've already jumped into coaching because we as coaches can't help ourselves, right? We had this subject matter, but we're like involuntary.
So why do you think parents are get fixated on the results? Because the articles,
Yes, right?
if we're told that these travel tournaments are where we get exposure, then there's an implication that the results of these tournaments are what determines whether or not you're going to be, coaches are going to be interested in you. So we're playing time. Well, if my exposure is at travel tournaments and my kid's on the bench, that is literally counterproductive to why we're paying all this money and doing this, right? And it's just, it doesn't have to be that way, And again, I'm not like you're absolutely right, man. Like it is normal. Like part of being competitive is not being satisfied when you don't get the result you want. but also recognizing like forget the mistake, remember the lesson. Like,
Yes.
okay,
Which can
like I
happen
didn't get
even
the
when you
result I
win,
want.
though. Sorry. Which can
Yeah.
happen even when you win.
Oh
How
yeah.
many wins have you had that actually felt like a loss?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're in the first, second round against a team that, like on paper, you should play well
Just
against,
like,
and you
oh,
don't do the things on your side that you do well. And on the flip side of that, sometimes you play a team that, objectively has more ability. I always tell people, here's your ceiling, here's your basement, right?
hmm
Team lower than you, they've got a ceiling and basement, right? Team above you, they've got one higher than you. So like, can you try to, if I'm the top team, I don't want to operate in that common space of their peak in my basement. If I'm the lower team, even if, and I think, that when I had against the Baumgrens, the two times I beat Billy after losing him 15 times, their basement and my ceiling, it wasn't a lot of crossover, but I needed to perform at this level to give myself a chance. And having kids look at it like competition to me is not the bar, it's a measuring stick.
right.
So if you lose, it does not invalidate you. It doesn't mean you're not good enough. It means you weren't good enough that day. And what it was is like what a wonderful opportunity to look at what happened. If you think you said the term like you think you should have won that. Well, what didn't you do? Why didn't you win that? Is it again, okay, this team was running this offense or defense and we hadn't seen that before. We weren't prepared for it. So can I be objective about how they were doing it? And as a coach, can I provide my kid the tools at practice to understand how to counter it next time? Is it just, a lot of times this is cliche is we didn't serve well, we didn't pass well.
It's good that
You
you
know,
recognize that because you, as a player, for most of your career, have always had to play over your head to get the wins that you've gotten. Right?
the top
I don't
ones.
mean to
I mean,
use
in
your run at
Chicago.
Newberry as a straw man fallacy, but making the NECVA finals with that squad was
Oh,
just
that
it was
was
a
that.
combination of an overachievement and just a bunch of rough riders who
That wasn't overachieving, man. We were
yeah
competitive. Like, and I'm not,
yeah
and I'm not forgiving my language for anyone. Like,
I'm
look,
writing it down every time.
everyone that went to our school, Dave recruited kids with a chip on their shoulder. And our school wasn't that big. We didn't have a gym on campus.
Right.
But like let's call space spade. Matt Talamontes, who sadly isn't with us anymore. Matt finished with over 6,000 assists. Was if he wasn't 5'9", he would have been a Division One setter, and there's no doubt about it.
Right.
Josh Aberly was had a 45-inch vertical, and that's not exaggerating. Like he had jumping ability. A lot of us played Double A USAV. When we left that, like Mark Thomas touched almost 12 feet, like as a D3. So like, yeah, we beat Nazareth, and on paper Nazareth was ranked higher than us, but like we had the tool that one year, we had all the tools there, but the one thing that what we had was an ignorance to what the seeds were and what other people thought we should be able to
Isn't
achieve.
that liberating?
It was satisfying at the end of it.
No, but
You know what I
not
mean? Like,
not knowing where you're supposed to be and not care
I think the
and not
best,
have to
you
play
know
under
what?
that
I
pressure.
love you bring
It's
this
like
up. I
house
think
money.
one of the best things for my career playing was a stat that to this day I couldn't tell you who gave it to me, where it came from. That at the time, and this is back in the 2005 2006 time, that male volleyball players peaked between 28 and 32. Like that took so much weight off my shoulders on the way up from a literal Rec Sixes player at 19 to
Late
playing open at
bloomer.
24, getting my first open win at 25, and winning the Midwest Championships in 28. And not a bragging thing, but my point is like if you looked at my career, most of it was an uphill climb, and most of it was beatings at a certain level. You know what I mean? I had about 2 years in Chicago where I would argue I was in contention to win it every time I stepped on the court, and then I blew my shoulder out and I was done. But giving my kids the excitement of what they can do results wise without the expectation or pressure of it. We had two girls that we have two 14-year-olds that are pretty advanced that are training with our top girls. So last night they scrimmaged against two of our college commits. Both going to play Division One, and they were there early warming up, and I told them like excited to give it another shot against these two, and one of them was like, and I said, hey, I gave them the ceilings and basement thing. I'm like, you get a shot tonight to possibly beat them. If they win, they're 3 years older than you, and they're more experienced. Like you girls on paper, like I agree, like they do what they should do. They should be successful based on their experience. But you're competitive enough and you're talented enough. You got a shot at it. Like give people, instead of the pressure of, oh, we're playing this really good team, you have to work hard to get to a level to be worthy to share the court with those people.
Yeah.
And I looked at every time I played against someone with main draw experience or like one of the top players, like I looked at that as like I worked my ass off to get to a point where I had the opportunity to either take a beating or maybe come out on top. And you know, at the end of the day, like at 41 and clinging to what I have left physically, and so like look, I'm very lucky at 41, and certainly with the back injury I had 2 years to be playing at the level I'm still able to play. But man, like what a privilege it was to have my body function the way it was, and frankly, be in a position in my life where I had the ability to go coast to coast and play people from the Pacific to Atlantic. Like I just think it's so sad for the kids that put so much time and effort into this, and the results, like they don't even get to just take a look around them and be like, holy, there are professionals that don't travel and get to experience as much as you get to do, you know? So yeah, so I think it's tough for everyone. And to your point, like all this, you know, I like talking from parents, players, coaches. Everyone's got to do their part. You know, as a coach, I got to be connected with my parents. They're cutting the check. Are we transparent on what we're providing? Are they aware of it? Or if they have questions or discrepancies based on previous experiences, am I addressing that? You know, with the kid, am I in tune with why they're playing volleyball? And I think it's my responsibility to know that. And if a kid isn't, you know, if a kid doesn't have goals that are college track, then they're not in the college track program. You know,
Well,
go ahead.
look,
I see
I
you guys
watch
on
I
that.
watch Remember the Titans. Yeah, someone said Brian's my hero. Don't forget to smash like, guys. Um, I remember watching Remember the
Appreciate you, Dan.
Titans, and like Coach Boone was asked one of his players, like, "Do you think you're going to go to college?" He says, "Oh heck no, Coach." He says, "I figured since I got to be in school anyway, I might as well just have fun and hit some people." It was just one of my favorite lines because you already knew their role, right? Now I want to talk a little. We have use this time we have left to talk about the role of coaching. Like, what is their role? And I was going to get into this, and you know, because I'm a theater guy and I like the climatic series, but I think I'm going to jump ahead to something I really wanted to talk about because we're obviously going to run out of time. If you borrow something from other coaches, ideas from other coaches on how
Borrow,
not
I take them. Coaches are thieves,
well,
man.
yes, well, there's an old saying, right? Good artists create, great artists steal, right? So I'm going to talk more from the neck up. I'm not talking about plays and techniques. Like there are a lot of coaches at certain levels, maybe not where we are, that see some coaches that are disciplinarian and they see results and they see that it works. And they think if they do it the same way and that it'll work for them. And the reason why it doesn't work is because that disciplinarian, whatever you may think about their coaching style, is a skill set. And I want you to bear with me, but don't get undressed. In the United States Army, all right, I'm in basic training. I'm at Fort Knox, Kentucky. There's just a whole bunch of noise, like just a whole bunch of people yelling. But then when you start listening to the yelling, you start seeing the way they break people down and build them back up. To this generation might not seem like the best idea, but I will only say this: when you go to graduation at boot camp, your hair is cut right. You're standing up straight. You're addressing people as sir and ma'am, right? You are more sharp on your feet. Your nutrition's better. You're physically, whatever, strong and everything. So you are par for the course, a lean, mean fighting machine. And you, as people, will not do that because you are not the drill instructor. The drill instructor to you sounds like a guy just yelling, so you figure you should yell too. No, there's a skill set that comes with that. So I'm just talking to new coaches or whatever. Don't just borrow ideas from the neck up that are not within your skill set and your wheelhouse. And again, people might disagree with me on this and that, but these guys, we all graduated. We were literally ready for any kind of war, metaphorically and physically. So And that trains me. I wouldn't be what I am right now without not just the whole military service, God bless, but like just that boot camp. So if you're not, for example, there's some coaches like Rex Ryan or whatever that have a sense of humor. If humor is not your jam, and if that's not how you communicate, don't freaking do it. You borrow physical ideas, but mental, if it's re-examine, because the kids depend on it. And I want to land by saying this. You'll love this. Because I'm known for my sense of humor when I coach with kids, parents, even the refs are like, oh God, here comes that guy, because they already know. I'm coaching LAVBC. Jason Olive, shout out. Still doing great things. Saved my life actually during COVID. Just gave me purpose. So God bless him. We're playing Surfside. We lose the first game 25-3. I go into the huddle and I say, bring it in, right? And they're just like, some girls are like, oh God, this is devastating. Some are devastated and some are just like, you're my coach. Give me something, And I said, bring it lower. And I said, we got him just where we want him. and I said it that way because it was my jam, and it just loosened everybody up. And some girls are like, "Oh God, give me a break," and some girls are like, "Yeah, like let's go," because I knew as a coach in years and years of my training, congruent with my theater performance degree and all the things that I bring, that was the right line to say. And guess what? Fairy tales do come true. We won the next 2 sets. Okay, against a Surfside, which is a program. So I wanted to say that because I knew we were running out of time, and I could skip the other 3 if we have time to talk about the other, because I wanted to leave you the floor, and I'm stuttering right now because I feel a certain way about this. It's okay to be that personality, but if that's not who you are, re-examine. I'm not going to say don't do it, but re-examine as if your kids depend on it, because it really does.
I just think and this is, you always want me to give you hard takes, or and I'm going to give you one right now.
Did I not invite it?
Oh yeah. You always want me, and I could be Switzerland on certain subjects but this, if you coach 11 to 18-year-old kids, I get if you are a high-level coach on a high-level team at a high-level club, and there's a transparent expectation that if you're on that team, like this is all the girls that play on this team are going to go Division I, and you got to train to play at that level because that's going to be what you're doing. I think for most coaches, if you're not dealing with that caliber of kid, which 98% of us aren't, I think it's important.
Why is your number always above 90?
Because it's the truth. Because it's the data doesn't lie. If anyone has statistics that counter, but there's over 450,000 girls playing high school volleyball. And if every scholarship that was able to be funded was funded, there'd be less than 6,000. So do the math on that. It's that's where it's at. Most 94% of kids that play high school. So we're not even talking about cut kids. 94% of kids that play for their high school in a sport will not play in college. That's the data.
Division I. Okay, you're being a slickster here.
No, all divisions. NAIA, NJCAA,
okay.
Division 1, 2, and 3.
Got you.
It doesn't mean they won't play any sport, like intramurals, club, like anyone. I always tell my kids that are well-rounded, you could play intramurals, you could play for club at a high, a good academic school. There's so many girls in our area that go to Wisconsin-Madison that are not, going to play for Kelly Sheffield, but played a lot of high-level club ball, and they're going to play for a club team. Honestly, we have some kids that we connect them with adults in the area of their volleyball or their college so that they can play with the adult community, which I think is a underutilized tool for kids that want to stay in the sport.
I agree.
But I'm just saying there's a lot of things that make people feel like if you just do A, B, and C, you're going to play in college. And I'm sorry, the supply and demand, and it's getting more disparity with that. But going back to my original point with that, like if you coach kids that are not coming to you saying, I want to play Division I, I'm going to sacrifice everything else. You need to coach for their goals, not yours. And if you have a team that doesn't allow for that, don't take their check and then beat them through it. Like coach the kid in front of you. And that's where I think that, well, you say of course, but in our region, it's that if you really poll parents and players on what their experience is,
Hmm.
and again, that actual like the technical guidance or is this designated to them, I feel like a lot of practices are just I watch kids go through, it's almost like calisthenics. Like they're running through drills and there's no feedback. So kids are learning to do the same thing over and over wrong. And then they go to tournaments and they're doing exactly what they practiced, how they did it at practice with no correction to it. And then the coach is frustrated that they're not getting the result. The parents are frustrated. And it's like, where was the guidance if you want a different result? And if you want your kids to play cool, calm, and collected, and you're blowing up on the sideline, how is that the example? You know what I mean?
Who's
Like it
talking
looks
about
to
blowing up
me,
on the sideline? I ain't talking. I'm talking
not
about
you. I'm just saying.
knowing what your strength is, knowing how the
Well,
kids receive it, and if it's not your jam, don't do it because Brian's gonna win that argument every time because of people like that. Okay,
yeah.
that's
So
that's an
I'm
argument.
agreeing.
I'm never gonna win that argument with you if
No, it's
people.
not.
Well, this is
We're not.
this is
We're
a bit
not.
of a
We're not
debate.
arguing.
It's a bit of a debate,
I'm.
but
I think I'm kind of like you brought up the point about like don't coach because you see someone don't coach in a way because you just see someone else coaching it, right? So I'm piggybacking off that
right.
saying on that note, right? Like as a coach, if you coach 18 or under, I believe like if I've got a kid that I have a girl that's a 5-year hurdler that is competitive. She's been in her college track pro, she's balling. But she looked at me and she's like, yeah, I just want to play intramurals in college and have a good time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? So like I'm pushing that kid, but I don't need to have the like, hey, you have a goal to play Division 1 and you're not, you know what I mean? Like
I get you.
there there's
No, because that has to be
boundaries.
said too. Yeah.
She gets to play track in the spring instead of training with us because her goals allow for that versus the kid that looks at me saying, I want to play in college. They're a little behind. They're not getting the offers they want. And I'm like, look at all these other things you're opting to do instead of train. And that's okay if that's what you want to do.
Amen.
But you have to be open that there's a kid somewhere else that's making the sacrifice that you won't. That's looking at the same position you're not getting and you're frustrated with,
But
right? Like
you're
that.
but there's a lurking variable here because what you're teaching your kids, if you teach it right, you're teaching them things that have nothing to do with volleyball. You're preparing them
Yeah.
for life in many other facets. That's why
Oh, it's always the head fake.
I
It's never.
mean,
It's never.
yeah.
Look, volleyball's the outlet. We're
No.
teaching them. We're teaching them resilience. We're teaching them how to work well with others. We're teaching them how to adapt. We're
Amen.
teaching them how to pick themselves up when things aren't going well. We're teaching them how to keep the foot on the gas pedal even when the other side doesn't require it. Whatever you do, do it to the best of your ability. Lou Holtz. I mean, that's a big one for me.
Let,
So and part of whatever you do, do to the best of your ability. That might mean you only play volleyball 2 nights a week for 2 hours and you give your best and then you go and you excel in other things,
there it is.
because
Let's
a lot of kids are being told, like if they do, they shift their focus to other things and then there's this concept of they quit. No, they didn't quit. They shifted their perspective. They aligned their actions to accurately fuel their priorities so that they can achieve the things that are really important to them.
Yep.
Because I just
Let's
look at,
Hey Brian,
go ahead, because I know we
let's
got
leave just
time.
enough room to have fun with myths. I have 3 myths,
Yeah.
and I'd like to use
I go a little
the
longer,
last
just a little
5 minutes for that. All right, myth number 1: if you listen to everything I say, you will win. I'm in the huddle. I'm like, so if you listen to everything I say, you're gonna win. They're like, yes, coach. I'm like, no. All I can do is make the score 22 up. Who gets the last 3 points? You guys, this and that. Second one, based on your body type, you are not able to play a position. That is my least favorite thing. They keep saying what I can't do, right? Never had my hand out, but I got a handful. When you want to stand out, they don't understand you. And I don't set trends better than I set examples. If that's who you want to be that person. All right. And you fail trying, but also as a coach, you advise them of the body type and what colleges are looking for if that's their thing, if that's in that small percentage. But if I'm the coach, this is the box. Let's get to work. If this is what you want to beat those odds. 3, people who play on the best teams have the best coaching. No, you're in an environment where iron sharpens iron, but I'll bet $100 when you get out of every practice, if you ask what you've learned, they're not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you anything.
I think the big one is the concept that like you have to do things a certain way to be successful. And what, that could fall into like you got to play club, right? Well, again, what is it about club that typically helps to be successful? Yeah, if you're training more than people that don't play aside from their school season, that's going to help, right? Yeah, if you're developing the right things, that's going to help. If you are of a caliber where you're above average for your area and you do a travel tournament so you can play the other big fish from respective areas, I think that's going to be beneficial, right? But just because you're playing club doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the value of those things, so things of that nature would be one of them. For me, when it comes to recruiting, I believe a lot of people are looking for exposure, and respectfully, I think reality is the kids that assess schools beyond volleyball and then look for a program that, they could look at a YouTube video or highlights from that program, and I'm either able to work to that level, but physically I think I could see myself at that level, and then reaching out to the coach with a personal email with the reasons that you're interested in their school and a private YouTube link with clips. We've had over 30 girls get recruited. Some of them didn't travel at all their senior year. Some of them literally only went to visit the school, but they were playing against college track players, college players, adults, getting film from that, sending it to coaches. The internet has made it where, in my opinion, travel has never been less necessary. Again, you're a power conference caliber athlete. Realistically, a lot of you are getting your fees waived anyways from the programs you're at, but that's a conversation for another
There's
time.
that. Yeah.
Yes, at that point, you've earned the right where you need to play the other big fish. But respectfully, I think for a lot of people, I would argue that the biggest thing, if you're in the bottom 94%, is development. If you're not keeping up or catching the people ahead of you, none of that's going to translate when you're actually trying to get recruited. So I'll just leave those. I think yours were good, and I know we're running out of time.
And ladies and gentlemen, those conclude our myths. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our podcast. But Bryan McDermand should be plugging in his handle and where you can reach this volleyball coaching savage. Listen, there's some people, I don't know, maybe they shear sheep, pluck chickens, milk cows, practice law. This is all this man is about. Okay, Progression Beach Volleyball. Plug it in.
Yeah, so progressionvolleyball.com. If you're in the Chicagoland area, we run two state-of-the-art indoor courts in the Chicago suburbs. Some big news coming down the road. We might be expanding a little bit on that. We work with players of all ages and levels. The youngest I work with is 11. Oldest I work with is 76. All levels. So if you're looking for coaching, if you're not in the Chicagoland area and any of what we talked about resonates with you and you're looking for college guidance, virtual coaching, hit the contact us page, drop me a line. I have some people, mostly friends of friends. I'll look at film. I got one player in Texas. I looked at the film, could give them some feedback. You're trying to figure out what you want to do in college from how do I find a good volleyball program? Do I even know what I want to do? My program is a little bit different for college guidance. We try to talk to the kids, learn the full scope of who they are as a person, and based on that, both try to help them assess options that are compatible for them, be objective with film we see on how they can work and improve their game to maybe open some more doors on what might be available to them, as well as kind of give guidance on how to research schools and, make a first impression that separates you from the pack. So anyone that's looking for any guidance on that, coaches that are, interested in doing better things for their program, anyone that's trying to create a better environment for their players, get better, like I'm always happy to help. So kind of a one-stop shop for that.
Yes, you are. Indeed. Guys, this is episode 171. That's Bryan McDermand. So for all of you at home, I'm Jason DeBias. Do I love everybody today? It is Friday. Okay, yeah, I love you too. Because Bryan loves you, hence I must love you. We're going to hit my music, my friend. And we are out of here. Come check out the Option Podcast on optionvb.com. It's also available on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube under the NY Varsity Sports handle. You're going to love what you hear.